The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
There is nothing wrong with your television. What you are experiencing is what a patient experiences during cardiac arrest. Hello, my name is Dave Plouff. I'm a paramedic with the Town of Colonie. I'm involved with what is called community CPR training and what is called emergency medical service outreach. I would encourage you, if you have any questions pertaining to CPR training or any questions pertaining to emergency medical services, don't hesitate to reach out. I will give you that phone number before the end of this session. So what we're talking about today, and where I need your help, we need your help, of course, is with cardiac arrest. You've heard the expression, time is life, and there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. Time is life. What is CPR, Cardiopulmonary Resuscitation? Sounds lengthy, sounds technical, but what it is when your heart has an electrical disruption, it starts to misfire for all intents and purposes. You are no longer pumping blood. Your heart's not working correctly, and you're not breathing. We only have a matter of minutes in order to start resuscitation to maintain that ventricular fibrillation until help arrives, either in the form of an automatic external defibrillator, which I will show you, also emergency medical services along the way. There are over 420,000 out-of-hospital cardiac arrests per year. And a great deal of those folks never survive because they never received CPR. I'm asking for your help in helping to save a life. And it's relatively easy. And I want to show you that. This came out of research that demonstrated that the average person has fears about doing resuscitation. One of them is, can I hurt somebody? And I'll address that. Number two was they didn't want to take a class and take a test. And of course, their other concern was having to do mouth-to-mouth contact with an individual. They went back in and looked at the international research and found out that simply following 3 steps, which I'm going to go over, can make the difference between life and death. So, once again, when we talk about cardiac arrest, this is that disruption of the heart, of course, which doesn't allow the heart to properly pump, or it's short-circuited, and you're no longer sending blood. You have now collapsed, or wherever you are, whether chair or couch or bed. And along with that, what's happening is your brain is not getting oxygen to it. The sooner that we start, and they tell us for every minute goes by, there's a 10% less chance of being resuscitated. So that's why I'm asking for your help in order to start and stop start CPR and stop that deadly time clock along the way. So let's kind of go through this. You found a person collapsed. Of course, we're concerned. Make sure that you don't put yourself in harm's way. That's called scene safety. But as you arrive at that person, if they're, once again, appear to be unresponsive, and how we're going to determine whether somebody's unresponsive, it's pretty simple. We're going to tap on their shoulders. It's a process of, are you okay? If they do not respond to you, either eyes opening up or physically asking you or speaking to you, we know that we have a medical emergency. And at this point, you need to get help for this patient. And that's by calling 911. When you call 911, our communicators have been specially trained to offer you assistance in doing cardiopulmonary resuscitation. The next step, which is relatively easy after you've made that phone call, is going to be starting compressions. Compressions, once again, causes an artificial circulation of the blood in the heart. Where you're going to do it is located in the center of the chest. We're going to come right across from the nipple level. We're going to use the heel of our hand, and we're going to place one hand on top. Now you notice how my hands are. I have my fingers off the chest wall. The reason I'm doing that is because one of the big things I hear all the time when we do training is, can I break a rib? The answer is yes. By keeping your fingers up off the chest wall, you're going to reduce that chances. So you have to understand, breaking a rib at this emergency situation is the lesser of the evils. What they recommend is really easy. It's called pushing fast and pushing hard. So pushing fast, what does that mean? Well, the standards as we teach CPR, they talk about doing it at 100 to 120 compressions. And I know that's very, very difficult to try to remember. They're asking you to do math in the middle of a crisis situation. But there is a way, and I wish to share that with you, how to remember what 100 compressions is. And I'm going to let you hear it rather than me trying to say anything. An easy way to remember it, and how appropriate, staying alive. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure this person does stay alive. Those 3 easy steps, and let me just go over them one more time, because it's pretty scary, and I understand that. A person you found collapsed. Now, if they are in a chair or a couch or a bed, you do need to understand, and for demonstration purposes today, we're doing this on a table so you can see it better, but a person has to be on a firm surface. They cannot be on something soft. Because when you're doing compressions, you're actually pushing on the chest wall, which then pushes on the lungs, the heart, against the back. And that's what creates the artificial circulation. So along the way, you need to get a person onto a firm surface. So once again, the easiest way, this is basically 3 steps. Determine unresponsiveness. You can't wake them up. Are you okay? Call 911. And then once again, putting your hands on the middle of the breastbone, or what is called the sternum, interlocking your fingers, getting over the top of the person. And if you can keep your arms straight, it'll help you, less fatigue. And what you want to do is push fast and hard. And you want to do that, once again, remembering the song Staying Alive, which equals about 100 compressions per minute. And if we can do that until help arrives, or maybe we get fortunate enough that this person takes a gasping breath or starts moving, because there's a 2% chance that a patient could be resuscitated with CPR alone, but that's a slim thing. But we need to give that patient the benefit of the doubt. The other item I want to show you now that goes hand in hand with this, and is there just about everywhere, is what is called an automatic external defibrillator. I'm going to reach over here and just pick this up and kind of show you. You've probably walked by them. They're normally just about everywhere. They're indicated. I know sometimes people think this is pretty scary too. But this is the other part of the equation pertaining to saving someone's life. That heart that is what is called an ventricular fibrillation looks like, and if I could show you a picture of it, it looks like the heart's actually quivering. And what's going to reset that, or reboot it, another term would be a better living through electricity, and that physically is going to be a shock that stuns or temporarily stops the heart. In order to reset it, Once again, the most important thing when this arrives is please do not stop doing CPR. The minute you stop doing CPR, everything you've tried to do, including maintaining ventricular fibrillation, then deteriorates. When this unit arrives, the person who's putting this on wants to encourage whoever's doing compressions to push fast, push hard until they indicate to stop. So I'm going to go through the steps here now so you understand how this works. Really simple. Number one is to turn the power on. We're going to turn it on.
Apply pads to patient's bare chest. Plug in pad's connector next to flashing light.
The pads have no fear. There's pictures on. Now the person has to, you have to be down to skin on this, because these pads actually have to go on the person's skin to be able to read whether there is an electrical disturbance called ventricular fibrillation. Remember, CPR is still being commenced. I'm going to plug this in, plug the unit in at this point.
Analyzing heart rhythm.
Now they want me to stop doing
Do not touch the patient.
The reason being is don't cause any interference. It's trying to get a clear picture whether this is ventricular fibrillation.
Charging.
The unit's now charging.
Stay clear of patient.
Let's do no harm. Let's make sure that
Shock now. Press the orange button
just
now.
before I shock, I need to make sure I don't hurt anybody else. So I look to the left. You're okay. I'm okay. And then I'm going to push the button. You can see right here where the button is. I'm going to push that.
Shock delivered. Pause.
It's going to remind me
Begin CPR.
to start CPR again, unless this patient took a good breath, they started moving appropriately, their eyes maybe start blinking and stuff like this, or you see them breathing on their own. So these are the easy steps. Once again, Hands Only CPR, along with the use of an automatic external defibrillator, makes a difference between life and death. Now, my boss, Assistant Chief Paul Segru, does our data collection for the town of Colonie. And if I had his information here right now, we'd be able to show you that the people that survive a cardiac arrest was because of folks like yourself. In fact, the documentation shows that rapid onset of CPR and the use of an AED by bystanders has made the major difference. The folks in the town of Colonie that have been resuscitated have had immediate resuscitation by bystanders. I ask for your help once again pertaining to this. We need you. Now, if you would like additional information, either just questions or you'd like training, everything I'm showing you right here is it's offered to town residents and businesses free of charge. So by all means, don't hesitate. We're going to put the phone number up at the end here so you have a way of contacting me. Please, I beg your assistance in keeping people alive. And I thank you for your time. So I appreciate your attention. We've been talking about time is life, and this is another major concern of us, which is called external or internal bleeding. Today we'll be dealing with more the external version of it. This is a national program that you can actually take a look online, but you'll need to take the actual program in person. It is called Stop the Bleed. Stop the Bleed was developed after that unfortunate sad situation in Sandy Hook, Connecticut. Lots of children's lives were lost. A research group after that went back in and took a look at what could have been changed or done differently in order to save lives. And one of the things they found out was, in that situation, was that if they could have done bleeding control, there was a potential for lives being saved. Now, please understand, yes, active shooters is very scary along the way, but this can be used for just a host of things. This could be your own home that you're bleeding from an injury. This could be a motor vehicle accident. It could be weather-related, just a host of different things that could cause a person to bleed to death. And how fast can someone bleed to death? In your upper leg, you have what is called, and it's usually the upper leg that's more it has a chance of causing more bleeding, is called a femoral artery. And if you lacerate that artery, cut, i.e. that's what laceration means, somewhere between 90 seconds to 3 minutes, you could physically bleed to death along the way. So what I'm going to talk about today basically is a way of saving someone's life pertaining to this. So a couple things. Your own protection, scene safety. Please, we don't want you to become part of the problem. We need you to be part of the solution. So making sure that you don't, I'm not going to say stumble into it, but is there something that could cause problems, whether it is shootings or traffic on the highway? You need to make sure that you're safe. The second part of being safe is protecting yourself from what we call bloodborne pathogens or coming in contact. Now, ideally, we would hope that you have gloves, but we know that's not a possibility. But you know what works well? Plastic bags that come from your supermarket. That will actually do the same thing. The first part of the ABCs in Stop the Bleed is actually alert. That means calling 911. You definitely need to get help coming in this situation, or it'll be a long day without us along the way. So now as we get into this, we want to talk about bleeding. Now, the second part of bleeding, or we need to understand, it comes in different versions. The scariest that we have to worry about is if you arrive to see blood actually squirting or pumping out of a wound. It's doing that because it is what's called arterial bleeding. The blood will look bright red in color. The second part of the bleeding is called venous bleeding. It comes from a vein. Initially, when it comes out, it'll be darker red or maroon, and then turn bright red as it becomes oxygen in it. Once again, the big ones that are going to kill somebody is, once again, that spurting arterial bleed, or a great deal of blood around somebody that's coming from venous flow or a vein along the way. So at this point, we need to help those person. And the easiest and quickest way is going to be to help that person is what is called apply direct pressure. You know, in the emergency medical service training, we used to talk about putting one hand over it, and we realized that wasn't going to do it. So what you need to actually do is two hands, and those two, once again, very similar like we talked about in CPR. You want one hand on the top, one over, and you want to push, and you want to use as much physical force. Now, this is going to work very, very well on initially what's called extremity, arms or legs, but this could be also in your armpits or your groin along the way, or these are areas that we have to be concerned with. Direct pressure first. Number two, if you have available, and this is what's called hemostatic gauze. Big word once again. Hemostatic meaning it has its own clotting agent. What is recommended with hemostatic gauze would be to stuff this into the wound. That sounds pretty scary, and I know we're all worried about hurting somebody. But the reality of the situation with this is going to be, if you do not stop the bleeding, this person will die. And that's what we don't want to happen. So we're going to stuff that physically until you can't stuff it any further. At that point, if it continues to bleed, we're now going to use what is called a tourniquet. Now, this is a commercial version. I'm also going to show you something you could make in your own house. It slides, if you have it apart, it slides in. If you can put it over the limb, that will work well. When we put it over the limb, we want to go above, at least 3 inches above where the tourniquet would go. We never put this over a joint because you're not going to be able to get to the arterial artery to be able to stop the bleeding. And what you're going to do is just twist. You're going to twist this until the bleeding stops. Now, please understand, the injury hurt. Putting a tourniquet on somebody also hurts. But we have to understand that we need to stop that bleeding along the way. So this is, once again, these three things are so critically important going along. The direct pressure. Now, if you don't have hemostatic gauze, and I can understand that, is anything clean, a clean cloth of any sort, can also be used in order to stop the bleeding. Now, as for the tourniquet, other options. This is looks like a kerchief. That's what I'm back in the Boy Scout area. Or this is called a triangular bandage. And what you could do with this is physically put this around, and then by just putting a square knot into this, you could take this, which is a dowel stick, or a spoon, or a handle, or just about anything, and then by twisting this, you could also make a temporary. Our concern is if it's too narrow, like a piece of rope or a leash or even a thin belt, that you could cause more injuries to the skin and possibly the nerves along the way. So physically, we want to use something wide in order to stop the bleeding along that way. These are so critical factors, and unfortunately, we've learned so much about bleeding control. The Mandalay Bay was a perfect example on neighbors helping neighbors. There was no doubt about it. And improvising to the point of using a blanket to physically make tourniquets out of it. So I ask for your help because this is so critically important. We offer this free course, the Town and Colony Emergency Medical Service. Don't hesitate to, if you have questions about this, you'd like to see more about this information, the website, once again, is stopthebleed.org. Take a look at that. Don't hesitate to give us a call if you have a question about this, and I'd be more than glad to answer it. I thank you for your time.